Hello everyone, Derived Energy back into our house. Another response video to Pyro, same format as last time. Let's kick it off.
Hello Derived Energy. Yeah, okay, well first off into this logical thing and asymmetry. Okay, basically you're talking if you don't exist, you can't regret not being born. So the question is, are the unborn deprived in some way? And you're saying, no, they're not deprived in some way. And I am adding to that the fact that you can't say they are spared in some way either, right?
No, they're not spared in some way because they don't exist. But what you can say is that objectively, a universe in which there is less suffering is better than a universe in which there is more suffering. And this fact is not contingent on whether someone exists. It's not contingent on someone who would have suffered being able to appreciate the fact that they're not suffering. You know, it's as simple as that.
Otherwise, I could say that to be born, they are deprived of being spared in some.
How can you be deprived of being spared? That sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Way. The fact is, if they're non-existent, they are not deprived by not existing, and they're also not spared by not suffering.
Again, they're not spared, but the universe itself is objectively a better place if a person who would have come into existence and suffered tremendously didn't. I would choose the universe in which that person didn't exist because it's an objectively better state of affairs.
Okay, you have to compare the non-existence, suffering, and their pleasure, and you have to compare the existing suffering and pleasure. Frankly, I don't think you can consider the non-existent. I'd rather talk about something, material like a rock. Would a rock be better off if it was living or not?
You want to have a philosophical discussion about whether it's better for a rock to come into existence than for some kind of sentience to emerge from a rock. I mean, it's ridiculous. A rock doesn't have any form of ambulation. It doesn't have any biochemistry. I mean, what would it think if it came into existence? Would it think just, oh, it's getting a bit of a drag just lying here for millennia, being an inanimate object?
And I'm curious, in your case, if you're denying that you say that there's this desire to live that is predominant, then why is the void disconcerting to you?
Why is the void disconcerting to me? Good question. I think it's because I'm the product of about 3.5 billion years of evolution. Ta-da! And this process of life evolving has been run by the imperatives of survival and reproduction, and therefore it's developed a psychology in people generally that they abhor irrationally and subjectively abhor the idea of their own non-existence. But you can recognize that this disconcerting feeling towards one not dying and not existing is irrational, because if you don't exist, then there's nothing to be afraid of. But this does not stop my irrational subjectivity from regarding being dead as kind of a disturbing notion.
Wait a second, you did admit that these terrible cases that you offer relief to are, what, 0.1%? Didn't you say 99.9%? Day-to-day isn't like that. So you're offering relief. Why wouldn't you have to include the probabilities when you're saying, well, I help them out by depriving them? Shouldn't you have to do a statistical, survey to see,
No, you shouldn't have to run a statistical survey, as you put it, because it doesn't matter how many people enjoy their life who you bring into existence. There's bound to be some people who are harmed by being brought into existence, and you're bringing all these people into existence, and you're putting each and every one of them at some risk. It doesn't matter how big or small that risk is, because that risk is still there, and you can't simply offset the harm that comes to somebody by drawing attention to people who enjoy their life and feel that they've been benefited by being brought into existence. I mean, life and producing life, procreation, it shouldn't be considered to be some kind of jaunt to the casino whereby you win some and you lose some. You know, I mean, these are individual human lives, sentient human lives, and they're capable of abstract thought, and they're capable of coming to these philosophical positions that I've been discussing, you know, and coming to the realization that they may well have been better off not having been born in the first place. And, you know, if you're suffering and you think of your own personal suffering, you can't just look at the world around you and see lots of happy people and that can somehow compensate for your suffering, because you're still suffering. It doesn't matter how many people around you are having a good time. If you're suffering, then you're suffering.
I mean, I am willing philosophically to say we don't know if people want to live or not, but the practical fact, you know, for philosophical purposes, but the practical fact is, yes, if you ask them or check behaviorally, things do want to survive, which means they want to live. They act.
No, most people act as if they want to live, but the 1 million people or so who currently commit suicide annually, you know, they're certainly not acting as if they want to live, because they're taking things into their own hands, and they're kind of hijacking their own intelligence and the function that intelligence was designed for, i.e. survival and reproduction, and they're using that intelligence to act against Mother Nature in a way. They're taking their intelligence out of the remit of what it was constructed to achieve.
Like they do. I use the personal pronoun because that's my experiences. I did not say, I manage it so everybody should. I did not say that.
I'm sorry, but that was definitely the implication that you gave. You know, we were talking about suffering in life, and your intention was clearly to kind of negate or minimize suffering from the equation. And you were talking about your own personal experiences and how you've personally dealt with them, and the implications seem to be perfectly clear to me, that you were extrapolating that onto other people and saying, hey, there are ways to deal with this suffering, it's not so bad. But if those are your feelings, why do you think that you can just project them onto other people? Why do you assume that they are able to do so? If they can't do that, then your own personal subjective feelings are irrelevant.
I have of you know, pleasure and pain and suffering, and that I'm abstracting. You don't think you're abstracting your understanding of it? I think you are, and if you don't use the personal pronoun when you're using your personal understanding of suffering and pleasure, then that's dishonest.
Dishonest? Abstracting and being dishonest. Okay, well, we're having a philosophical debate, so of course there is going to be some elements, at least, of abstraction. But, you know, I'm not pushing the envelope here with what is capable, what you can do with abstract thinking. You know, I'm abstracting in as much as I'm saying some things about pleasure and pain, you know. But these things that I'm saying are objective, they're sound, they're valid. You know, I'm saying that it's objectively sound to state that pain and suffering are bad things for people to experience, unless they're a sadomasochist, I suppose. I don't think this is controversial. You know, I'm assuming that if you don't exist, then you're not deprived, and assuming that when you're dead, then it's like, you know, how it was before you were born, then, you know, that's perfectly intellectually honest. You know, I'm abstracting when I say that you know, there's no one to be deprived of any pleasant mental states. But again, you know, this is perfectly sound, valid, rational thinking.
Yes, death is sometimes preferable, and life is sometimes preferable. You think you can ignore the natural symmetry in that argument because you think there's this asymmetry in the deprivation of...
There is an asymmetry there. There is. I mean, just look at it. Please, just look at it, right? If you're born, it's possible to regret the fact that you were born. But if you don't exist, then it's impossible, by definition almost, that you can't lament the fact that you weren't born to experience good. It's an asymmetry. End of part 1.
Of not get